Hey, folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner, producer of the show, and we are thrilled that you are with us today. We have the Minimalists with us today, and of course, I'm talking about Joshua Fields Millburn and Ryan Nicodemus. They've been featured in New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine. Of course, they have their own podcast. They've spoken at Harvard, Apple, Google. They have their popular documentaries, Minimalism and Less is now featured on Netflix. They are from Los Angeles, California, in the studio with us today. They have a brand new book that you have got to read. We're going to get into that book. We're going to talk about Josh as a 3. We're going to talk about Ryan as a type 7. And then they brought their team into the studio with us as well. So we're going to talk about a few of their team members and their types. We're going to dig into their book and talk a good bit about that and their philosophy on minimalism. You are going to love this show. So glad that you're here. That's it for me, Anthony Skinner. And without any further ado, here is the host of our show, Ian Cron.
All right, Joshua and Ryan, welcome to Typology.
Thanks for having us.
The Minimalists, Anthony, are in the house.
Yeah.
I read your book last night on a 4-hour flight from San Francisco to Nashville, and I got to tell you, I loved it.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
That's impressive in 4 hours.
I am so envious. I wish I could read that fast. That is unbelievable.
I've never read our book in 4 hours.
Well, I'll tell you, we're going to go into it, but there was so much that I loved about it. And honestly, like, you know how it is. You have people on your show, and you just can't possibly read everything that, that someone sends,
Yeah.
Right.
And but I really wanted to read it because I was familiar with your work before, and I loved it. And I'm going to talk about why very specifically as we go along, because it was at times quite moving because you're so transparent, or maybe use a better word than transparent. You were so authentic, and I do think there's a difference between the two. And I think that what I loved about it, and you reference this in the book, is that this is not a how-to book. This is a why-to book.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
So we have so much to talk about,
Yeah.
and we only have an hour to get it done. So
right.
let's get it done. All right. So before we get to the book, let's talk a little bit about you. But we have to start here because what follows won't make sense otherwise, which is you need to define minimalism for people. And then we're going to jump into your lives a little bit.
Cool.
The thing we say in the book is minimalism is the thing that gets us past the things. So we can make room for life's most important things, which turns out aren't things at all, right? We have a lot of stuff. One stat in the book is that the average American household has 300,000 items in it. And you know what? I don't think that's bad if it was making us happier or more joyous or more content, but it's often doing the opposite. All these things that we want aren't actually the thing that we want. We think it's going to produce some sort of feeling within us, and maybe it does for a temporary period of time, that pleasure chase. And we mistake that pleasure with these sort of higher forms of well-being, like tranquility or equanimity. And so with minimalism, I say as a minimalist, everything I own serves a purpose or brings me joy. We're not deprivationists. We're not monks. We don't live the monastic life. Nothing wrong with that. But what we've tried to identify is what possessions in our life serve us and help us serve others, and what is sort of getting in the way. Unfortunately, it turns out that most of our stuff is junk. And it masquerades as though it's important or sentimental or even precious. But of course, if everything is precious, then nothing's precious. But we're clinging on to everything as though I need this. In fact, that word need comes up a whole lot. We've heard this word essential a lot over the last year and a half.
Right, like the book Essentialism. Right?
But especially during the pandemic, it was essential workers, essential travel, essential business. But now people are really starting to look around their homes and say, what is essential for my life, right? What stuff is essential to me? And so minimalism really starts with the stuff, but it's about clearing the clutter to make room for what's actually important.
Right. Beautiful. Now, Josh, you're a 3.
Yes.
On the Enneagram. Ryan, you're a 7.
Yeah.
And you are relatively new to the Enneagram.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about 3s and 7s. And then this is always fun when you have people in the room that, don't come with all their pre-existing biases and thoughts about the Enneagram and a script because they know their type so well.
Right.
So this is going to be a little fun. Okay. So every type has an unconscious motivation that powerfully influences how that type habitually and predictably acts, thinks, and feels from moment to moment. And if you think about personality, really, it's in its simplest terms, right? Let's eschew sort of the psychological jargon for a moment. It's how you show up for life. That's it, right? It's just how you show up for life.
Yes.
Right? In a way that's probably predictable, right? If we were dear friends and you showed up and began acting in a way that was uncharacteristic of you, I would say, gosh, Josh isn't himself today.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has a predictive quality to it. So for 3s, the unconscious motivation is a need to succeed, to appear successful, and to avoid failure at all costs.
Yeah, that's Josh.
Your turn's coming.
Yeah, but I say that though it is Josh, but it's very endearing. Like I actually kind of envy those traits and how focused he can get because of what drives him.
The irony of this is, I've had a bit of an awakening over the last few years in particular, and waking up to some of the illusions of success in particular. Yes. Understanding that all success is really failure in a way.
Yes.
In the sense that, you're a fan of Buddhist thinking and Buddhist thinkers, and so I think you would understand that any sort of chase is an attachment to some future, right? And so any chase is clinging. Any clinging is failure to me. So in a weird way, any sort of societal based success, right? Metrics, achieving, all of these things. And so even though my quote unquote type, my personality is a 3 in the sense of being an achiever, but at the same time, the striving for a long time made me miserable.
Yes. Yes. Well, when that passion that 3s have, and we'll talk about that in a moment, takes hold, the gift that is inside of that becomes a curse. Right? It becomes your undoing. And in fact, in the book, it does become your undoing.
Literally, yes.
Yeah. Literally. Like I was going to write down my favorite lines, and actually I was going to write down my favorite questions that you ask in the book.
Yeah.
That I loved, right? Because I'm a 4, I love questions. Don't give me answers. Don't give me black and white. Give me grays all day long,
That's
like
beautiful.
sort of keep me in that space. And
I wish I could sit with that the same way. Sitting with the sort of uncertainty, and I desire to do that, and when I become conscious of it, it's great. But I'm not predisposed to simply questioning without answering.
Right.
I have to say, like when you said that whole idea of all success is failure.
Yeah.
And the steps you walk through there, that's like a powerful revelation for a 3, right? I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, he has a great crash in the book, and so we're going to hit that a little bit. Because you have kind of what I would call the blessed abyss, where you have a crash. And that drew your whole identity into question, right?
Yes.
And it was sort of a classic 3 crash. And we're going to get to that. But the 7.
Yeah, let's talk about the 7.
Right, let's talk about the 7.
Man.
So the unconscious motivation of the 7 is really a need to avoid emotional and psychological pain.
That's me.
Right? And so, the way that 7s do that is, but they're incredibly future-oriented people. Like staying in the present moment is hard for 7s. So they're always thinking about a future of unlimited possibilities. And what's the next escapade? What's the next adventure? What's the new stimulating idea? Where's the next exciting restaurant that we can go to and try something new? And so you bring, at your best, this incredible joie de vivre to life. In fact, the word that you're called the enthusiasts. And the word enthusiast, it derives from Greek words entheos, which means in God.
Oh, wow.
which I love.
Yeah, that's great.
Because when you're at your best, there's this kind of beautiful ability to be in the present. And when you allow suffering into your life, you carry this depth and joy at the same time. Like you're no longer just a happiness freak, you become a joy person. You know, which is a whole different thing, right?
Yeah. 100%.
And so that's just a little summary of your types.
I love
it. What makes you groove.
Yeah.
You know?
I have to say, Ryan's wife is back here smiling the whole time.
How am I doing?
Yeah.
We doing all right? Does this sound pretty accurate so far? Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, when I was looking at some of the descriptions of a 7, it helped me see why I use so many superlatives. Like, this is the best burger I've ever had. That is the fanciest this. I use a lot. I try not to use superlatives, but it's like I can't help it. They just come out all the time.
Yeah, you all love an adverb, man. You just, always very bestest.
Right.
You even make them up.
Right,
You even,
right.
you kind of already just make up words to express your enthusiasm for everything.
Yeah.
Each type also has what's called a passion, which is this internal emotional motivator that you probably aren't conscious of until you are, which is part of the work, right? You begin to learn things like that unconscious motivation. You begin to learn, okay, what is the interior emotional environment that kind of perpetuates this not so great way of being in the world, right? Because you don't want to be a person whose identity is predicated on success.
That's right.
Right. And you don't want to be a person who's avoiding pain
Right.
at all costs. And by the way, it's because, and we're going to get to your childhood in a minute.
Yeah,
But it's because most 7s don't believe that they will be supported, that there's no one there to support them when they are. And so therefore there's a fear of being stuck in those painful places forever.
Oh, wow. You're getting, making me choke up over here, man. I've never put it or I've seen it that way.
Right.
But yeah, I get that. Wow.
So for the 7, the passion is gluttony. And it doesn't mean around food, though it could.
Yeah.
What it really means is that you can't stop consuming life. It's like you can't get enough fun. You can't get enough adventure. You can't get enough escapade. You can't get enough laughs. You can't get enough future.
Give me the fire hose of life. I will take it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That is right.
Right. But unfortunately, you know about Carl Jung's The Hungry Ghost?
No.
Oh man, if you guys want to read a great book, there's a book by Gabor Mate, who's sort of a confrere of Johann Hari. And he's an addictionologist, psychiatrist, and he talks about the hungry ghost. And it's this, Carl Jung came up, it's this creature with a really small mouth and a super long, skinny neck and a distended belly. And so it can't get, the mouth is so small, it can't get enough in to fill this giant distended belly. And that's really the picture of an unhealthy 7.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you just can't get enough.
Yeah.
And there's such a FOMO-ish fear of deprivation.
Oh yeah. Oh man. I experienced that last night at Ramsey's in the basement with all his whiskeys. I'm like, he has like 300 different kinds of. I'm like, I want to try all these.
Yes, you do.
And he did.
And I did. Only half of them.
And you still made it here this morning.
That's right.
That's right. All right. And so for you, the passion is deceit. And what that means isn't necessarily that you lie to people. It just means, and by the way, this is when you lack self-awareness that I'm describing you, or you're unhealthy. When you're healthy, you don't look like this at all. It's something more beautiful and really actualized, right?
Yeah.
But when you're not doing great, you are able to, you have like a kaleidoscope. 3s have a kaleidoscope of masks, and they can keep swapping them out in order to win the admiration of whoever it is that they're with.
Yeah, there's an element of control in that, controlling the narrative.
Totally.
And that is definitely a desire of mine that I constantly have to push against as soon as I become aware of it, because fundamentally it doesn't matter, but in the moment it feels like, well, as long as it's being orderly. It's an OCD-ness in a way, right? That obsessive, compulsive desire to control things. Now, part of that's probably birthed from a childhood where there was a lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
And so in that uncertainty, you control the few things that you can control. I was obese as a kid, like significantly. I was the fattest kid in our school. That's when Ryan and I met. We were the two fattest kids in school. And that was one of the few things I could control. I was like, well, I could put food in my mouth, basically, and have some sort of momentary gustatory pleasure. And
he just said gustatory. I just want to say that's maybe the first time on our show someone has used that most excellent word. Continue.
Yes. So I'm controlling the mastication.
He's got a lot of good words.
You really
sure.
you need to really enunciate that word just right.
Right.
I just want to say.
But yeah, I found that controlling childhood wherever I could. Whether it was like organizing the G.I. Joes in the appropriate bins. The bad guys go here, the good guys go here. Beautiful metaphor, by the way. I didn't realize it for about 30 years until 30 years later. And their weapons go into a third bin, sort of thing. Controlling the very few variables I had. Unfortunately, you can't control everything when you grow up, and then you realize that like everything's out of your control, and that starts to feel like the lack of order feels like chaos.
Anthony!
Ian!
My brother, what if I told you you could get high-quality, organic, and non-GMO groceries delivered to your door for a lot less than you're paying now and help out families in need?
Now that's something I'd want to know more about.
Well, let me tell you. That's what I'm doing since I discovered Thrive Market. As a proud Thrive Market member, I get the products I love, and my paid membership provides a free membership for one low-income family.
That is amazing.
Right? And let me tell you this. I have ordered off their website, which, by the way, is very user-friendly. It's not at all like one of those websites where, you feel like you just fell into some kind of terrible technological labyrinth. Right? They have the best selection of high-quality, healthy, and sustainable products online. Now, let me just tell you about one product I love that they have.
Okay.
Have you ever had Ora Bora sparkling water?
Ooh, I have.
It is so great.
Lavender cucumber, my fave.
Oh, I like coconut lemongrass.
Yes, so good.
Right? Herbal infused.
So you're telling me Thrive has it?
Thrive has it.
Come on.
It is amazing. We got 2 cases of Ora Bora sparkling water through Thrive Market 2 days ago.
Ooh.
Love that stuff.
I'm having some.
Well, you're welcome. So I used to be also a Go Lean cereal guy. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, that's because I'm so healthy. But now I eat organic coconut flake cereal from Thrive Market.
Ooh, I like that.
And the list goes on, my brother, of amazing things, right?
I got to try those.
Changing my life. And guess what?
What?
Now they have 2 new membership options. A 1-month membership for $9.95 a month, or a 12-month membership for $5 a month.
$5 a month?
That's right. Billed at $59.95.
Wow.
And as a special offer for Typology listeners, join Thrive Market today to get $20 off your first order and an exclusive free gift. The only way to get this offer is by going to thrivemarket.com/typology.
Right.
That's Thrive, THRIVE, market.com/typology, TYPOLOGY, to get the exclusive offer of $20 off your first order and a free gift. You can't get this offer anywhere else. Go to thrivemarket.com/typology. Well, it's interesting. I think, and I've said this before, right, Anthony, that your type, obviously there's a genetic sort of proclivity, right? We all have sort of a disposition and a temperament that, sort of powerfully influences our personalities. Like, kids come out and you can just tell sometimes right away, like, okay, I know what this is going to be. It's just like it's fairly clear, right?
Yeah.
But there's environmental factors, right? And so it's pretty clear, and I don't think this is outing you guys because the book is, as I said, very authentic and real, that trauma affects personality formation.
Yeah.
Right. And so as I read the book, I just kept thinking, of course you're a 7. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Like, why wouldn't you be?
Right. Yeah.
That helped you survive childhood.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I love, man. The more and more I dig into this Enneagram stuff, the more I love it. But yeah, I was looking at the Enneagram. I'm like, oh, no wonder I self-medicated with drugs and alcohol in the corporate world.
Yeah.
No wonder when I was a kid, like, I never felt like I could play enough. I always felt like playtime ended early.
Yeah.
I never had enough time with my friends. I always felt like I needed to hang out with my friends more. But yeah, that was just another form of self-medication.
Yes.
I remember in the corporate world, you used to say, like, when people would go out for a drink, you would amplify things. So it wasn't like, what's the sort of vapid line about drink to remember, not to forget sort of thing. But there was a time in the corporate world where it was like, well, this is outstanding. How could I make it even more outstanding?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you a stimulant guy?
Oh, not so much, because my mom was a stimulant gal.
Okay.
And I did like do some stimulants, but like it felt so good. I was like, oh, this is why mom got in so much trouble. So like I kind of steered away from this. I was more like a pill head.
Okay.
Opioid type.
Right.
But yeah, and to Josh's point, that's exactly what it was. Like, I never did the drugs to cover anything up. Like, I never had the only thing I was covering up was withdrawal. I mean, that's the only negative thing where I'm like, oh, I got to go get something, because I'm like going through withdrawal. But typically when I had the idea, like, oh yeah, I'm going to like to crush up that Percocet and snort it, it was always about, I feel good, I could feel better.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And I'm not a 7, but that was my thing.
Yeah.
If I could, and actually, in some ways looking back, Bill W. has this thing. I felt like looking back, and I don't want to romanticize or make it some kind of heroic quest that I'm describing, but I do think that it was almost, I felt like looking back, I can see that I was a frustrated mystic. That I was chasing some window of experience that was a desire for communion with God. The experience of it, the feeling, the felt experience of it, right? The problem is that window is very narrow, and you rarely hit it. You can in the early days more often than in the later days. It's a very small window, so all day long you're going past it or under it, and you're constantly chasing the dragon, right? You're going up and down, looking for the window. But of course, and then when you find it, it lasts for about 20 minutes.
Oh yeah.
It leads to the next chase, which then makes you miserable again. It goes back to the whole failure conversation, right? Is it in a weird way, because this isn't math, it's more poetry than it is math, but there's sort of an equation side to it where attachment is chasing is clinging is suffering is failure. And as you go through that, you realize, like, oh yeah, the pursuit of happiness, the chasing, it's in the fabric of our country. You pursue happiness.
Yes.
But that's the very thing that makes us miserable, right? And so that chase, because happiness can't be pursued, it can only be uncovered. It's already there. You see it in, my daughter when she was 2 years old, and the sort of pure happiness or joy, whatever you want to call it. We can use these different words that mean the same thing, but basically it's there. It doesn't need to be pursued. It simply emanates. Although we become acculturated to believe it does need to be pursued.
Yes.
And achieved and accomplished. And as though it's there on the horizon. As soon as I get to that horizon, I'm going to be there. But of course, there's always a new horizon.
Yeah. I remember like just being super high and like feeling really good. But then I would start to mourn the fact that I knew it wasn't going to last.
Right.
So like even when I would get to the highest point, I was looking into the future like, well, I'm only going to feel like this for about 10 or 20 minutes. And then, the chase. I'm so like, cause I still like drink, but I don't, it's a different mechanism now. Like I'm not chasing anything with it. I'm not trying to hide anything with it. I'm not trying to alter my state with it. I mean, I'm not saying I don't get to altered states anymore, but it's just a completely different, I don't know, baseline or there's not a pursuit happening with it now.
So in many ways, this book really is about, there's a parallel here, right? because one of the things that I love about the book is you talk about this idea that minimalism isn't deprivation, deprivationism. It's not the point of minimalism is not to move away from having stuff as it is about making space for the stuff that matters.
Yeah. But what's interesting is minimalism, it might be like this Trojan horse for maximalism in a way. Because what we're trying to do is trying to help people maximize this, this human experience, like, and get through it without all the pain and the suffering and the chasing. So in a way, I mean, you could call it maximalism, but the Maximalists, it wasn't available at the domain, so we went with the Minimalists.
There you go. It's all about the URL.
That's
man.
right. That's right.
There's a reason we don't write books about tidying up, right? And or do podcasts or anything like that. Our podcast, people call in, and it often starts with the stuff because people think they have a stuff problem, right? And they think that stuff problem is going to be solved with some decluttering tips, but is your problem really a shortage of decluttering tips? Of course not. I mean, if I hand you a book, we hear the 7 ways to clean out your closet.
It's been written.
Yeah, exactly. Over and over and over, right? And yet all of our closets are still cluttered. Well, why is that? It's because of the narrative we tell ourselves that if I buy these things, they're aspirational purchases, I'll be this kind of person who's achieving, who's successful, who has status. All of these things are, we amass trinkets to say something about ourselves, right? And so in a weird way, buying the stuff, we figure out at some point, that doesn't make us happy. Unfortunately, we then turn away and say, well, you know what? Getting rid of the stuff will make me happy. And that's another chase. And no, it's not. In fact, sometimes people will call into the podcast and say, you know what? I minimized everything. Why don't I feel good now? And it's because, well, you're trying to feel good by letting go of the stuff instead of making that room to start asking some of these deeper questions. Like, what's truly important in my life?
Yeah. So you... and this, again, is why I love it, because when you make space, right, when you declutter your external world, which in many ways is a reflection of your internal world, right? It's a projection of it. Then what begins to happen is the green shoots of your true self begin to emerge, right? The real questions begin to appear, many of which you may have been avoiding.
Yes.
Unconsciously. Questions like, who am I? Why am I here? Why am I carrying this pain? Because who wants to look at pain? And that's one of the things in the book, right? You guys, as this clutter began to go away, and this is, by the way, in terms of Enneagram work, this is Enneagram work, right? Because what you're doing is beginning to shed yourself of those things which prevent you from being the highest expression of who you are. Right? And so for you guys, it seems to me that what began to come up was your stuff. Grief, pain, anxiety, right? I don't want to tell your story, but Ryan, tell me, for you, that was clearly an experience, right? As you began to eliminate stuff, it's like you began to have to look at maybe what I would call the deprivation.
Yeah.
Right. The whole.
Yeah.
Oh
man. Yeah. And to be honest, like I'm still doing work on myself, but this idea of living with less is, it does make room for me to do that work. But yeah, the stuff is just the initial bite at the apple. I mean, because I did this packing party where, like Josh told me about minimalism, and I'm like, all right, man, I'm in. This sounds great.
7.
Being the 7.
How can I get more minimalism?
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, but I didn't know what to do. I'm like, all right, I'm a minimalist. Like, now what? So we came up with this idea of a packing party where we pretended like I was moving. Josh came over, helped me pack up everything, my clothes, my kitchenware, my towels, TVs, electronics, framed photographs and paintings, my toiletries, my furniture, everything. And I spent the next 3 weeks unpacking, clothes for work, toothbrush, toothpaste, bed sheets, tool set, the furniture I actually used. But when I was faced with all the leftover stuff, that is where the work probably really started to begin with all this internal stuff. because I just kind of had this light bulb moment of like, oh, here's like this physical manifestation of what's going on inside of me. And there's a lot going on that like I need to figure out. And I donated and I sold and recycled like pretty much all of it. And that's really where the minimalists.com started. It was with that packing party story. But what I love about what we do is the stuff. And we do talk about getting rid of stuff a lot, but that is, our, to use the metaphor again, it's our Trojan horse for us to really talk about whatever we want. And what we're really trying to do is help people heal in a way. And I think, it does start with this stuff, because that's a physical thing that you can, it's tangible, right? Like it's right there in front of you. Like you can associate with it. So it's an easy place to start, but it is just the beginning.
So what was going on inside?
Well, it's kind of what you were talking about, the chasing, the avoidance of feeling certain emotions.
Which one's particular for you?
Anxiety is a big one. I still struggle with that. The childhood didn't help for sure. I mean, that was because you said something that really did like choke me up a little bit, about feeling like I couldn't be supported. I'm getting like choked up talking about it. But that was my childhood, and I was running away from that sadness, So there was definitely some of that going on. And I do feel, now it's funny because I do feel supported, but like what gets me choked up is just thinking about that little kid that, didn't have a lot of support.
So now as a man, how easy is it for you to sit with that feeling?
It's really difficult right now. I didn't even realize it until you said it. I didn't even realize it. So this is new for me. This is really new.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to lean in a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
The visual image I have is sevens at times, and many of my dearest friends are sevens, is that before they do their work, it's like you're watching them skating just in front of the cracks. And they're always looking over their shoulder, and they're just faster. They're on the lake, and the crack is coming up behind them, and they're just skating.
I think I have those dreams legitimately of what you're describing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so part of the healing journey for sevens is, how can I stay in this present moment? Because that's where the miracles happen, is in the present moment. How can I stay there? And, the word allow, suffer, actually, in its derivation comes from the word to allow. Right?
Yeah.
So to allow the feelings of grief and anxiety and sadness to have their way with you, until they're done. And the realization that all things are impermanent, including your feelings.
Yeah.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
You're just going to blow through like a weather system.
Yeah.
And they're going to be followed by other feelings.
Yeah.
And by other feelings. And, it's just ain't going to last. And then what happens for the seven is they develop this depth, right? Because as long as you won't have the feelings, you'll be shallow.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
You'll be entertaining as hell. But what's
only
entertaining,
so
it makes you class clown in 9th grade, kind of makes you an idiot at 35.
Yeah.
You can't make fart jokes at 35 and have people really take you seriously.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, occasionally.
Yeah, sometimes with the guys, cigars, Ramsey's basements,
Right.
whiskey.
Sure, yeah.
I'm sure Ramsey likes a great fart
man.
joke. Anyway,
I do know the more that I meditate, the more I can go through life living in the present moment. So there are mechanisms that I do have in my life that I know when I use those tools, like I can sit with things a little bit better.
Well, you have Sam Harris on your show, right? Yeah. And others. And as people know, in fact, we're doing a live stream tonight. My meditation teacher is coming, and we're actually teaching meditation. We got the cushions on the floor. We're going to do the whole thing. A basic introduction to mindfulness tonight.
Isn't that interesting? We have to teach mindfulness. We have to teach meditation. It's so it's really there's something ironic there, but it's totally necessary.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're not alone. I'm going to come at you now, man. I've been digging on Ryan for a while.
I didn't think I was going to make it through that, man.
I do want to just highlight that
I'm learning how to manipulate him. This is perfect.
Violation Enneagram ethics 1.
That Enneagram 7s are typically one of the more anxious
Yes.
types.
They don't look like it.
That. Yeah, they don't look like it.
He never strikes me as the anxious type. In fact, it seems as though it's just water off a duck's back.
Nope.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like I do digging into the Enneagram stuff. It talks about how I don't want people to see me being anxious. So so like it's a good day for me is when I don't feel like other people perceive me as anxious.
Yes.
Not that you weren't anxious, but just that other people didn't perceive you as anxious.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, one of the lessons I've learned over the years is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute counseling session. And this is why some people can go to couples therapy or personal counseling for a long time and never really get anywhere. This is why I'm such a believer of intensive counseling and my friends at Restoring the Soul in Colorado, created by my longtime friend Michael Cusick to help couples or individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Now listen, if you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience breakthrough, you need to get in touch with my friend Michael and his extraordinary team of counselors at Restoring the Soul. If you're looking to get out of the rut you're in, but can't wait months or years, call Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation with Michael's staff. Call 303-932-9777 and learn how their intensive counseling process can help you. As a special bonus, just for Typology listeners, make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationships. All right, Joshua. So what's your greatest fear in life? Quickly.
It'd probably be an insignificant. Yeah. Which is, of course, we derive significance from externalities until we realize that doesn't work. And then we try other externalities because, well, clearly the problem was, it wasn't a nice enough Lexus. So then I'll buy the different Lexus. Right. And then when the stuff clearly isn't working, then it's like, well, okay, maybe it's Twitter followers, or maybe it's significance through any other external means. Right?
So, but it's interesting as a 3, their focus would be on externalities. So, because for them, when they're not healthy, seeming is more important than being.
Yeah.
Right. Surfaces are more important than substance.
Right.
So buying the Lexus, having a lot of Twitter followers, whatever it is, those become symbols of success, and that means of being lovable. Because the 3 believes that the world only values people for what they do, not for who they are inside. Right? For what they accomplish, for what they achieve. And their great fear is that they won't be valued. Or significant. Right? Your fears of being insignificant.
Sure.
Right? And so that's this pursuit of messaging to the world, I'm successful. And that's almost a 3's way of saying, almost like, I'm lovable. I'm valuable.
And I've developed an allergy to it recently. And we had a whole conversation with a therapist on our podcast recently, because it was the same time our publisher reached out and said, "Hey, congratulations, the book's a New York Times bestseller." And a piece of me wants to be like, get on the mountaintop and tell people, look how significant I am. But I've also seen the mirage as a mirage now.
Right.
And I realize that is, it's not only is it irrelevant in terms of well-being, true well-being, but it's also simply a mirage in the sense that, well, you can game that system, or okay, competition is really a mental illness, which is really difficult to
that's hard for a 3
to discuss.
Oh man.
Yeah. And so realizing that, oh my gosh, you know what? There was a piece of me a decade ago who would have wanted this more than anything, but at the same time, it doesn't change anything. This isn't the reason that we do what we do, although there would have been a time that it was the reason.
Right.
That was the outcome. as opposed to it being a byproduct of something that's a lot more meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Buddhists have a great vision of this, right? They talk about praise and God, it's opposite. Maybe it's praise and blame, gain and loss. It just has this long list. It goes, be like a tree who stands in the middle of them all.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a journey for all of us, right? Is to not attach to these things which give us a sense of identity, of solidness, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm significant. I'm, this sort of thing. Okay, quickly, your greatest fear.
Oh, my greatest fear. An anxiety attack. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
I've had those. They are not fun.
Yeah. Man, my biggest fear, this is like kind of out there, but it is something I worry about. So I was raised Jehovah's Witness, and there's this whole concept of good and evil.
Right.
And, the idea is if you are a Jehovah's Witness, you're good. If you're not a Jehovah's Witness, then you are serving Satan. You are serving the devil.
Right.
And it was ingrained in me from birth, this good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest fear is that I think I'm doing good, but I'm actually doing evil.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Y'all learning something about each other today.
That's powerful,
is that? Yeah, it is. That is really powerful.
Yeah.
You know what's really beautiful about you, Ryan, is that I sense that you hit a classic 7 wall, right? Whether it's drugs, drinking, you got this past chasing you, right? A family past that's chasing you. You've tried everything you can to gluttonously stuff your life with anything to neutralize pain.
Yes.
Didn't work, hit a wall, and then began to do your work, allowing pain to have its way with you. Yeah. And it's created such a depth. I mean, I've just been watching in this show. I mean, I've had 7s on this show, man. It was like babysitting, man. It was like, get the Adderall, man. I don't know. And the conversation was so surface. It was funny, but so surface. And what's so beautiful about the conversation with you is watching your ability to stay with what's happening. And just even making an admission like that for a 7 is impressive.
Dude, I'm trying to get my paycheck out of this interview.
Yeah, well,
my paycheck is this therapy session.
Right. Meter's running. And what's so beautiful about listening to you is that you've got this self-awareness. You talk about the mirage, the illusion that success is going to mean anything at the end of the day. Like at the end of your life, what are you going to give a shit about, really? If the only thing they remember about you is that you were a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah. And by the way, 100 years from now, the planet will be full of new human beings.
That's right. That's right. That's Anne Lamott says it, right? She goes, do you know what's going to be different about 100 years from now? All new people.
And 1,000 years from now, you'll be lucky to be a footnote. And even if you are a footnote, who cares? Was it Woody Allen who said, I don't want to live on in people's hearts and minds. I want to live on in my apartment.
That made me lightheaded.
That was very good. That was very good. But again, I do sense, and I sense it in the book, and we're going to dive deeper into the book because I could talk on this level all day long, but I do want to make sure we talk a little bit about the new book. But what I love about this is that the book isn't, how do I say it? It is focused on these deeper issues, right? You talk about relationships, right? You talk about living in truth. You talk about values. You talk about all this stuff that you can focus on once your life is decluttered, right? Once the windshield isn't like full of stuff, and you can't see anything, it's like, if you're brave enough to clear the space, and I would say brave enough to clear the space, then all this other stuff is going to find its way into your life and bring the treasure you're looking for.
But it not, David Foster Wallace says about the truth. He says that the truth will set you free, but only after it's had its way with you.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there is that moment where why didn't minimizing make me feel good is because, well, it might make you feel bad first, in the sense that you're going to start asking some questions that subconsciously you were avoiding for a long time. And it's really opened up for me over the last decade, those questions about achievement, success, externalities in general. And in a way, I've started to develop a bit of an allergy to success. And whether or not that's healthy, I don't know. But I've just really become turned off by the idea of needing that to be me, right?
So three things that I'm excited about that you said.
Okay.
So one of the great fears that threes have is that behind all the masks of success, all the externalities, there's no one there. And so when you start to talk about, identity, which you just did, right? And that an aversion to success and all those things, right? The journey for the three is moving toward authentic personhood. Right? It's like so that's the antidote to deceit is authentic personhood.
Right.
And that's what you're describing just then was authentic personhood. And that's more and more what you're concerned with. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think I've been taking a shovel to the sort of facade and digging deeper the last few years, because there is all the stuff on the surface, whether it's the mirage or it's a facade. It is the outward appearance, but it is also not. It's incongruous with the internal in many ways.
Yes.
And of course it doesn't have to be.
Right. Well, we all want alignment.
Yes.
Right? We all want alignment. Your journey, according to the Enneagram, is to move from gluttony to what's called sobriety, which doesn't mean necessarily abstinence from mood-altering substances. Sure. Well, what it really means is allowing the ability to be mindful in the present moment versus mindless in some future of fun, of avoidance. Right? Yeah. It's the journey to the ability to go from a jumping attention to the ability to stay focused on something, to move toward completion in one thing at a time, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And
so it's hard for me to not constantly think about the next thing.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah. And it's in the sobriety piece of it, the way that I interpret that is because I do get, endorphins get released. I get high off of just when someone comes up and they're like, dude, you changed my life. And they give me a big old hug. Like, I love that.
Sure.
Yeah. But it's almost like I love it too much, in a way. And the sobriety is just being able to sit without needing the endorphins to affirm that I'm a good person.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I love that. So it's interesting. I was thinking about the 9 types in minimalism. And like, which ones would struggle more with it and which ones would have an easier time?
Yeah, that's fascinating.
I don't know if I'm right. I was on the plane last night going, I don't know, trying to go around it. But I was thinking about, Anthony, that improvers, sometimes they used to be called the perfectionists, would have a relatively easy time with this. Because
ones, you said.
Yeah.
My wife's a 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because of the order thing. And really also because it's the right thing to do. It's good people would do this. Right?
Right.
You're smiling.
You're smiling.
Yeah. I mean, I think my wife's had similar revelations to me recently. Like, good and bad are generally constructs. We highly moralize everything in our society, right? You should drink more water. You should go to college. You should join this Facebook group, whatever it is, or you shouldn't eat that, or whatever it is. We've created all of these shoulds. We're shoulding all over ourselves, and there aren't things that we're supposed to do. But I can see that in Bex, my wife, in particular, where although I think there's a lot of this in all of us, and maybe it's a learned behavior from her childhood. Her family's very righteous, and one might even say self-righteous at times, right? And thinking that it's. I think what we do when we become self-righteous, we inadvertently place ourselves on a pedestal, don't realize we're doing it, and how that's like the opposite of compassionate, because if you're looking down on everyone, thinking as though I have the answer. And by the way, I've done it as a 3 as well, and it manifests a bit differently.
It's much stronger in ones, though, I will say.
Yeah.
That taking the moral high ground.
Yes. Yeah, but then also realizing that that's generally an illusion as well.
Yes, right. And in their journey, I'm not sure if this is for your wife or not, it's really their passion is anger. And part of the anger, it doesn't feel like anger like an 8. No. It feels like resentment. Ooh. It's just beneath the skin. And so the resentment is not everybody else is as concerned with ordering in the world and making it better as I am.
Yes.
And I am annoyed that I'm having to pick up the slack that everybody else is not doing. Right? That's just a piece of it. Yeah. And so their journey is to serenity. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot control, change, whatever.
Yes. Convince.
Yes.
Persuade.
Yeah, be right all the time, or whatever it is, right? And it's so important, though, for self-compassion here, because when I describe your motivation and your motivation or your wife's motivation, we just need to understand these are wounds. And these are just management systems. Personality is largely a management system for childhood wounds to, you're talking about babies, that essential self that came into the world. Yeah. Personality becomes an overlay to guard that essential self eventually from being hurt. Right. And so, so beautiful. So I think, Anthony, just really quick, I think 5's easiest time ever. Right? They are minimalists. That's how we describe them.
Jordan's a 5, right?
Jordan, am I right on this? Are you a minimalist by nature? Do you have a really old printer in your house that is really hard for you to replace because it's like, I don't want to spend the money?
It's not a printer.
What is it?
I'm trying to think of what I have.
His old camera.
No, I have hundreds of cameras.
Hundreds of them. You're. By the way, Anthony, I watched a documentary on Bill Wyman, the bassist for the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. Okay.
I've never seen a stronger 5 ever. This guy has a basement. He took pictures and films from the time they started to the time he left 31 years later. Wow. He has every trinket. He has every poster from every show. Wow. He has, it's like his basement is like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy needs to be assisted immediately. He needs an archivist, but I'm afraid he won't let anyone in the basement. But 5s are notorious minimalists, but partly because, and tell me if this is true for you. Now we're moving into the space here. We got 3 other people in the room, 3 other types. So with 5s, they have a profound need for independence, self-sufficiency. They are very frightened of experiencing emotions in the moment for fear they could be overwhelming. They tend to think their way toward feelings. They postpone feelings into the future where they can process them alone, right? Not in public. People might say about you that you at times seem emotionally distant, possibly unavailable. And when, in fact, you have a great deal of feelings, probably as a child, you were very, very sensitive, really sensitive. You loved school because, I'm going to tell you what, you love to learn.
Yes.
You have an addiction to knowledge and information.
What's my Instagram handle? Jordan No More.
Yeah.
Jordan No More! This is good. You can't make it up. This is so perfect.
The deal is 5s generally do not like to come onto a podcast, and you didn't vote for this
because you're so private. You tend to hoard. This is where you get into trouble. You tend to hoard privacy, personal information.
Yes.
Your resources, but you are a minimalist by nature because you don't want to be encumbered. Right? And you don't want to, you tend to get drained by being with people pretty dramatically. You need to retreat real hard, right? And because your tank is this big for relationships, you can go all day long with people.
Yeah, but it drains. I mean, in terms of
because you're an introvert.
Introvert, yeah. So 3
introverts are not necessarily very common, by the way.
Yeah, but people often think that I'm an extrovert because I'm socially competent, so I can spend all day with people, but then I'm going to need 3 days to recover, sort of thing.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
But you were very outgoing. You were the first person. I noticed when we came in the house, you were the first person to extend your hand, warm, inviting, enthusiastic, smiling. Maybe this is the first meeting of the day. So, you know, maybe if I was your third interview today, you'd have come in dragging a little bit, you know. But just, am I describing you pretty well? Okay. So,
Jordan said spot.
A natural 5 is very minimalistic. But then the problem is you become, it goes from minimalism to hoarding and turning in on yourself versus toward relationship. You know, because you have a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset. That's typical 5, right? I won't hit your types yet. We don't have the time. Let's just move them over for the next round. Okay. So 1s, 5s, 6s, and 3s, I think, would have an easier time. Yeah. I think the harder time ones would be 2, 4, 7, 8, and 9.
Yes.
Unless the 7 thought minimalism, the next great adventure.
Right. That's exactly what it was. Yeah. But, you know, if it wasn't for Josh, I don't know if I would have went down that road. Like, if I just saw it, you know, on Facebook or something, I probably just would have been like, oh, that's neat, but, you know, I don't know if that'll work for me. But, like, I saw how it changed Josh, and I was like, wow. Oh, I love changing, especially when it's for the better. So,
well, I think, again, in reading the book, what really moved me was the authentic stories about your own lives. Which you hold up as a value in relationships. You know, you were talking about Johann Hari and how connection is the antidote to addiction.
Yes.
And I believe that from personal experience, you know, and being in recovery groups every week, that's the solution. You know, it's not just detox and, you know, that's all you do, you're done for. You'll be back into that over and over and over again. But really human connection, purpose, value, good work, being a contributor to the community, those are the solutions.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, Kapil Gupta says we are smitten with how-tos. And I think that's, people come to the whole minimalism thing or whether it's recovery or whatever, and it's, give me the 7-step plan so I can do this. But of course that never works. I mean, it works for a short period of time until you discover you don't have a why, and you've been given a bunch of hows, and now you're doing it, and you're like, well, why am I doing this?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you're immediately off the train tracks.
So you talk in the book about stuff is one chapter.
Yeah.
The first one, am I
7
right?
essential relationships.
All right, what are they?
So going in order, we start with the stuff because we're the minimalists. And all of the things that clutter our lives are really just a representation of the internal clutter, the mental clutter, emotional clutter, spiritual clutter, career clutter, relationship clutter, all that stuff that's going on inside us, right? So it starts with the stuff, then it goes beyond that. A relationship with the truth, because we're often lying to
God, that was so convicting to me, man.
Yeah, and the stories that are in there, you know, Ryan and I sort of cut ourselves open and poured our guts onto the page in this book. Talked about some things we've never talked about before. Beyond that, our relationship with ourselves, you know, the person we talk to the most is us. And our relationship with our values, quite often we don't know what our values are, or certainly if we're feeling discontented, is because we value one thing, but our actions align with some other sort of someone else's value system, sort of mimetic values in a way. Yeah. And then our values, or our relationship with money. Of course, it breaks up relationships and marriages and businesses. It makes us very discontent, and we are going into debt to buy a bunch of stuff we don't need or want. And so we have a contentious relationship with money. Our relationship with creativity, which is really also about our relationship with distractions in a way, because we've been told we're consumers, but really we're and that's true to an extent, but we have been told so much that we're consumers that we forgot that we're also creators. Yes.
I actually loved this idea that I wrote in one of the margins, that it seemed to me that one of the messages of the book is, how do you move from being a consumer to a contributor?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, ultimately what we want to do is contribute beyond ourselves in a meaningful way. I think all human beings have an intrinsic desire to contribute to others, right? And ultimately, the others is the last relationship, our relationship with people. Originally, we wanted to just be a relationship book, sort of traditional relationship book, but we realized that we had all these other relationships we needed to heal first before we could start even talking about our relationship with the people we love. And I think we misunderstand love. And so that last chapter... There's a section in there called Love is More. And in there we talk about, well, we say, I love my wife, but I love burritos. And it's like a language problem to a certain extent. I think we start to get confused. When we say we love something, quite often we mean extreme like. I really, really, really like this thing. I guess I love it. Well, that's just a misunderstanding of love. To love someone is to see them for who they are without trying to change them. Mm. And man, that's really hard for a 3 because it's
hard for all of us.
I'm good at fixing problems, right? But of course, we're not machines. We can't be fixed. Mm-hmm. And so, in terms of our relationships with people, when we wrote this book, I realized we had to heal a whole bunch of other areas of our life before we improved our relationships. It was not the initial intention. We didn't say, all right, A plus B plus C equals D. It was a byproduct. Our relationships became markedly better when our actions started aligning with our values and the person we wanted to be.
It's interesting that you end with people. I've been thinking about this, and I haven't thought about this for years, but when I was in my late 20s, I lived in a 3-bedroom house that was, fully furnished, and it was a rental. I moved out of that. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment and got rid of everything except my bed. And I lived there for a year with just a bed.
Yes.
And what happened was I ended up with 6 other people living with me. And so it's like I got rid of stuff and I ended up with people. So there were 2 other people living in one room and 4 people living in the den.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there were people everywhere. It was like no stuff but people.
Yeah.
You made room for the relationships.
Yeah.
And in this case, literally.
Yeah.
But also figuratively. Quite often we accidentally sort of marginalize. We forsake the people that we love for the things we think we love. Hence the title of the book. Love people, use things, because the opposite never works. Unfortunately, we do the opposite. Ryan and I did the opposite for a long time. We used people. We loved, or at least thought we loved, things. And man, what a recipe for discontent.
Yeah. Well, love people, use things. That's the big message today, dude.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm a fan.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of you guys. I'm really grateful. If you find yourself in LA and you want to come on our podcast, you have an open invitation.
We will gladly come your way.
Or just hang out. I'd love that too.
I will go anywhere where somebody uses the word "rumpant" in the first sentence of the book. I just want to say, I bet that's the first thing I thought. I was thinking that was a fight with the editor right there, man.
Yes.
I knew that.
One of my favorite novelists is a crime fiction writer named Adrian McKinty, and so this first page is actually written sort of as an homage to his writing style.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, so the streets are rampant with uniformed men wielding Titanic assault rifles. It's the first line of a book called "Love People, Use Things," and that whole section is sort of about pandemic preparation. The original first line of the book, though, which the publisher called me and they said, "Hey, I don't want the readers to hate you in the first line of the book. Can you wait
a
till
paragraph.
the 2 or 3 chapters?" And so the original first line was, "I cheated on my wife the day after my mother died of cancer." And because we talk about a lot of things in the book,
right.
and I wanted to set up right away, and they're like, give them some time to like you before they hate you. And so, I mean, Ryan and I deal with shame in this book. If anything, this book is a vehicle to help transport people out of the shame that we experience. Because here's the thing. The reason we wrote about a lot of those things, whether it's ending up in a mental institution for a week, or it is the drug abuse, alcohol abuse, the familial abuse, domestic abuse that was going on when we were kids, a lot of us deal with shame around these things because we think it's just me. It's only me who's going through it. And it's not. We're all going through some variation of it. It has a different name, but we've created so much shame in our lives. So if anything, this is a vehicle to transport people out of that shame they've been experiencing with their stuff, with the lies that they've told the world, with indiscretion, with infidelity, with whatever it is, with an incongruent life. Because your past self is just it's an ancestor that birthed you, but it is not you anymore.
Yeah. Someone once asked me at a conference, and you've had this moment, right? Where someone asks you something in front of a group and something comes out of your mouth, like out of your unconscious, faster than your prefrontal cortex can stop it,
Right.
Sure.
and sculpt it a little bit better. And it's just like, and you're shocked. You're as surprised at what comes out as the
raw.
person. It's just, yeah, man, it's unedited. And someone said, if you could tell your 20-year-old self anything, you know this question, that, from the vantage point of your age now, what would you say? And I literally came out of my mouth, you are not what you survived.
Yeah. Wow.
I was
Tweet
like,
that podcast, Sean.
Yeah.
you are not what you survived. And I was like, what? And then I started crying.
Oh,
And it was at that conference in Florida. I came out of my mouth and I started crying in front of like hundreds of people.
wow.
But as a 4, that's a high for me.
That was a good moment.
It was a really great moment for me.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh Ryan, thank you. And thank you.
So grateful.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
thanks for having
Love
us.
people and use things. Y'all, you need to go and check this book out. And that is not me doing the, good podcast host thing. Hey, everybody, go out and buy Josh and Ryan's new book. Love people, use things. Like, I am being really, really honest when I say it. And like I said, I read it last night, but I've made a point of reading it again, because you got a values worksheet in the back. You got, man, it's like, it's not,
There's some real work to do.
There's some real work to do, and I've loved this time. You all, anyone wants to check them out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, their handle is @theminimalists. You can join the 6 trillion other people that have on that.
Has grown.
And, yeah, it sure has. And then, of course, your podcast, which is the Minimalists Podcast, right? Which is incredibly popular, as well as your 2 Netflix, I guess, series or documentaries,
yeah.
right? Minimalism, and the other one is called Less Is Now.
Yeah.
This has been a great time. And hey, listen up, typology friends. Remember these words. May you have love. May you have joy. May you have peace. May you have healing. And may you have rest. Until next time.